Hey, I'm Joseph Small. This is my speech on my public speaking in Communications 120. I chose the topic methods of nonverbal communication, and that consists of three categories. Um, these categories are visual, auditory, and invisible communication systems. And behind me is one of my first slides, but we'll get into that here just in a second. Is So the purpose of this paper is to describe these three methods and their sub methods to each category, and just to give you a general understanding on how it isn't just words that we read from people or that we hear from people that get the communication across. It plays a part of it, but it's not the whole part. And what's key is so much things are going through our brain during that process that it registers it, but we don't even think about it. Sometimes we don't even acknowledge it ourselves, but it's like our subconscious grabs those things, and we grab that full communication conversation is into that nonverbal aspect as well. And the first one we're going to do is visual communication, and that consists of kinesics, which is the study of body movement, and the next one is proxemics, which I have a slide behind me. We'll talk about that in a second. And then we have artifacts. So for kinesics, like I said, it's the study of body movements, and it's based off of gestures, posture, and eye contact, as well as facial expression. So you can always tell whether someone's uh, happy with you according to their expressions, or maybe they're not displaying any expressions at all. But eye contact is key, especially when you're in a professional setting. Eye contact shows that you're paying attention and you're giving them your undivided attention. Your posture, whether you're slumped over or whether you're, closed, that shows you when you're closed arm like that. That's an expression of you kind of got a barrier up. But when you're open, you're standing tall, you're comfortable, and you're showing a way of listening through your body language, and then your gestures. You can There's good gestures and there's bad gestures, and what I mean by that is there's some gestures out there that you can use profanity and people know, you're a horrible driver, and then we all say, hey, how you doing? Those gestures. You might not even have to say anything. You just wave, and everyone automatically knows it's just a hello. So moving on, proxemics is the use of space, and it's intimate distance is the first one we're going to look at. We've got four categories. We're grabbing intimate distance first, 18 inches or closer, and actually this image over here shows it's hard to see. I'm sorry for that. You have a red half circle right here, which shows you that this distance marker here, 18 or closer, 18 inches or closer, is the space that you allow for intimate. So basically, that's people that you are intimate with, and that you accept into that space, which is telling them that you're accepting them to be in that circumference, and whether you realize it or not, you do consider them an intimate person. As well, the next one that we're going to look at right over here, it's in the yellow arch. Personal distance, 18 inches to 4 feet away. And this space is reserved for friends and family for the most part. That's usually always somebody you're comfortable with. You're allowing them to be in your bubble, your so-called bubble. And that's usually, like I said, 18 inches to 4 feet away. And friends or family. The third thing we're looking at, which I kind of chose this topic because it brushes a lot about stuff like what's going on right now, pandemic. And we're looking at social distance as a key word we're using a lot. And that's actually within 4 feet to 12 feet distance. And this space is used for interpersonal interaction, most often used by customers in an employee relationship. Going to the store, cash register, cashier and you usually keep that distance, whatever. And at the same time, it's also a space that allows people to ignore others. And that one to ignore others that you might not want to acknowledge. So it gives you a bailout option. That's that space where you're thinking in your head, oh, I know that person, but I don't feel like talking right now. And you have that option to get out of there before that happens. And thirdly, public distance, which is 12 feet and on. This space usually used for mass speaking. The people that use this, teachers, entertainers, and politicians, etc. Moving on, that's the full category of proxemics use of space. And the next one is artifacts. Pretty self-explanatory. It's personal objects we use to communicate to with something about ourselves, or with an object about ourselves. So anything that you could think of that's an object that you have that you think expresses or explains who you are, or what you are, or what your opinion of yourself is. So artifacts, we all know what that term is, and that's pretty much what it is. Even to this day, when we do artifacts, let's say in I think of Egyptian time, we'll go back and we find those artifacts that tell their story. So the same concept for us. So, like I said, those were the three subcategories of visual, which is sorry, I'm stumbling on that word. Kinesics, proxemics, and artifacts. The second one we're coming up next is the auditory system, and it's basically it breaks down in the aspects of a few categories. That one is paralinguistic, which refers to vocal aspects of nonverbal communication such as rate, volume, pitch, and emphasis. There's not really much to say about that except for that's part of that category of paralinguistics. That's kind of how you get a read off of how fast people are speaking, the volume of their voice, the pitch, how high they're going, how low they're going, and the emphasis, and how strong they're saying key words, and which kind of tells a story on what's important to what they're saying. The next one is vocal cues, and it uses the same thing, rate, volume, pitch, but it's a little different because what they're using is their vocal cues is the aspect of human voice that create rhythm or musical flow. So you got rate. The rate is the speed in which we speak. The volume is the loudness of speaker's voice. The pitch is the highness or the lowness of speaker's voice. Inflection is the manipulation of pitch to create certain meanings or moods. Pauses or hesitation and brief silences in speech, in conversation, is also something that falls under vocal cues. Pronunciation is key. It's pronunciation of the word and how we correctly and accordingly are able to accept the standards of that language. So think of someone learning a new language, you know it to the textbook style of pronunciation. But you're going to a place that speaks it fluently because that's their culture, and you're going to hear it dialect in it, and it's going to be totally different than what you learned. So that's where pronunciation is key, and it's important for people to properly pronounce the full word and its enunciation. So, and then there's articulation. It's the physical process of producing specific speech sounds in order to make it. So, again, that's you're making that specific sound during that physical process just to get. That's more of a musical mindset where they'll say something and sing it to a certain pitch that allows it to make a certain sound in it. So those are the vocal cues: rate, volume, pitch, inflection, pauses, pronunciation, articulation. And then the third one for auditory communication method is silence, or the lack of vocal sounds altogether. So the silence tells a story in itself, whether someone is not wanting to engage in that conversation or that topic, which means they might have a different opinion, or they just don't like that conversation in general, or they might have something that they don't care for on that topic, maybe something that might draw them away from it, and they don't want to engage in that. So silence tells a major story and usually lets us know that they don't want a part of that topic or conversation in general. Moving on, and the last system that we're going to look at, so that's visual was the first one, auditory, and then we're looking at the invisible system of communication. And this is the types of communication that deals with perception of time and the sense of smell and the use of touch and environmental factors and technology. So we'll dive into this real quick. And so the first subsection for invisible is what they call chronemics. And that refers to how humans organize and structure time and the messages to get messages conveyed as a result through organizational skills. And there's two sections to that section, which is monochronic cultures and polychronic cultures. And the first one, mono, we all know mono is usually one, right? And monochronic culture is which people carefully schedule tasks and they complete them on a step-by-step process and follow the strict agenda. It's just the way their culture is, and that's the way they were raised, and they follow everything to a T. And if you get out of that pattern, it doesn't make sense to them. So polychronic culture is people which take several tasks at once and can view time as a flexible option. So for the key word we use nowadays is multitasker. That's really all it is. It's a multitasker. It's someone that can get in there and juggle many different things at one time and be done. The next one is afflectus. That's it for the chronic cultures, or for the chronemics references to monochronic and polychronic. So that's the two options on how people handle time. Afflectus is the second subsection we're going to talk about, which is use of sense and smell to gather information. And we can all understand, you smell a flower. Let's say you smell it blindfolded, you're probably going to know it's a flower because your brain knows that information. It understands that smell. And no one has to tell you what it is. The next thing is haptics, and that's behind me on my slide. It's the study communication touch. Functional and personal touch is the least intimate and includes touch by others according to the professional position. And that's pretty self-explanatory. I'll keep reading through this. Social and polite touch occurs as part of an initial interaction, a greeting, or an informal ritual. Thirdly, friendship and warmth touch conveys a sense of closeness and caring between individuals. Fourth, love and intimacy touch typically occurs between family members or romantic partners. Visual arousal is the fifth, describes a type of touching that conveys sexual meaning and stimulation. These are what they call haptics. And that pretty much wraps up that. The last two under that category for invisible is environmental factors, such as, we've all heard of it, feng shui. You walk in a room and you just feel that inviting feeling, or something just feels balanced, or you walk in there, something feels off. That's that communication through the environment. The last thing is technology. And technology, as far as that communication goes, how we use that technology, we're not talking about typing and everything. We're talking about emojis. It's actually got a name. It's called emoticons, and are used in text messages, which allows individuals to express how they're feeling without even actually typing any words. So that's the last one for the invisible communication. So I hope that you followed me. There's a lot to take in right there. Again, in your next encounter of this conversation, of your conversation, maybe try and identify some of these types of nonverbal communications between you and the others that are involved. But I hope you learned something about your nonverbal communication methods and the 3 steps of visual, auditory, and invisible communication systems. All right, thank you. Have a good day.